Hello, everyone. This is Professor Gunner back with Natural and Artificial Environment. And today we're going to be finishing up this unit, Society, Culture, Technology, and the Future, by looking at some event that I mentioned in the last lecture that some thinkers believe is coming inevitably down the pipeline that is in our near future, supposing that our current rates of technological advancement continue. But before I get there, let me just kind of recap a few of the things that we've been talking about in the last few lectures. So, in this unit, after going over some of the fundamentals of what makes something natural or artificial, what an environment is, what constitutes an environment, we've been looking at a bunch of different analyses of this social environment that we have constructed for ourselves. Numerous times I've said that this environment is influenced by the norms and values that we hold, our educational system, any ideologies and priorities that we have, the very roads, architecture, and religions that we embody. In sum, this environment that we have constructed for ourselves is constituted by a bunch of different conceptual things and a bunch of different concrete things. Particular things and abstract things, like systems and institutions. In the latter half of this unit, we have been looking at criticisms of Western liberal capitalist society. And one of the things that we've noticed is this environment that we've constructed for ourselves is not perfect and it has a lot of problems. A lot of the problems that the critical theorists were talking about were socioeconomic and psychological. There's inequality. Sometimes the prices of goods are too high and we cannot afford to live the kind of life that we want to. Low wages are a problem in the US. And some people think that there should be a minimum wage in a bunch of these different places, that the minimum wage should be raised, that jobs should factor into what they pay people, cost of living increases, and things like that. If Eric Fromm is to be believed, we've constructed a kind of environment in which we're conditioned to engage in this kind of passive, mindless consumption, which is actually making us weaker and more dependent on the system, which ultimately does not fulfill us, and which causes us to be eternally expectant but disappointed with the state of things and the fulfillment of our own desires. We might also talk about discrimination in hiring and lending, other forms of oppression and marginalization, or just lack of opportunity generally due to economic status or class or where one grows up. Consequently, a lot of thinkers have argued over the last few decades that we are living also in a unique historical time, psychologically speaking. There's anxiety and depression, especially among the younger generations, at rates higher than we have seen before. A lot of young people feel as if their lives lack purpose and meaning, as if there is not some guiding star or some priority or goal that they should orient themselves towards. There's alienation, which we have discussed, which Marx tried to argue, at least implicitly, is something like a metaphysical state, an estrangeness from the world, from the labor process, the products of our own labor, and each other. Another emotion or state that characterizes the age that we live in is what you might call anhedonia. This lack of feeling pleasure and satisfaction with things. It's easy for us to fall into this once we take advantage of those neural circuits that produce certain neurotransmitters like dopamine, and we get caught in a cycle of consumption in which we cannot tear our eyes away, but it no longer brings us the satisfaction and joy that it once did. Addictions are ever present in our society. Addictions for social media, digital media, for drugs and alcohol, marijuana, attention, and all of these other things. Consequently, a lot of people nowadays are feeling nihilistic about our situation due to the aforementioned issues, but also because of the existential problems that are unique to us in this age. In this age where environmental degradation is something that we have to worry about, destroying the natural environment in a way that cannot be fixed, which will prevent us from surviving in the future on this planet. There are also worries about biological warfare, chemical warfare, and informational warfare between nations. And in the 20th century, we ended up producing that technology, which, for the first time in human history, has allowed us to wipe ourselves off the face of the earth entirely. Nuclear weapons, which have only gotten stronger and perhaps more reliable. In short, the environment that we've constructed for ourselves is imperfect and has some serious problems. And so, what we've been looking at the end of this unit is one particular school or philosophy which argues that we can solve many, if not all, of these problems by putting our eggs in a particular basket and changing our attitudes and beliefs about our human condition. See, a lot of people take it as a given that we are limited, finite beings. We are beings with limited knowledge and capacities. We accept implicitly that we are going to get older, we may suffer disease, and we will most certainly die. And we kind of take for granted and don't really fight all of the other issues that we've been talking about today in the previous lectures. But it doesn't have to be like this, argues the transhumanists. The transhumanists are going to say that if we continue to develop technology as we have, we can use it to deal with or circumvent all of the aforementioned issues. And so we might distinguish these transhumanists that we've been looking at from humanist philosophers and thinkers, which make up the bulk of our historical record in our thinking and writing on these issues. Humanists think that we can solve the aforementioned problems through social, cultural, and educational changes. For example, one of the paradigmatic philosophers who thought in this way was Plato. In his book, The Republic, he tries to make the argument that while this life is not perfect, we can make things a lot better for people if we construct education in the right way, if we get people to follow the right values and norms, and if we teach them, generally, to rule with their reasoning capacities and subject their selfish desires and appetites to what is reasonable and what is rational. This way of thinking and addressing some of the issues that we've been discussing in this unit has been around for a long time. But recently, there has been a new philosophy, a new solution, you might say, that has been offered to these issues by thinkers that are known as the transhumanists. The transhumanists think that we can solve these problems through technology and that we may be able to someday transcend our biological mortal bodies and our biological states. The thinkers that we've looked at so far in relation to this were Max More and Natasha Vita-More in their essays on transhumanism. But transhumanism isn't just about solving some of the problems that face us as a result of the environment that we've created for ourselves and that we live and operate within. You might say that transhumanism represents a radical solution to some of our problems, but also a philosophy of life, a way of looking at life and moving within this life that we have, and a particular view of human nature. So, in our last lecture, when we looked at the philosophy of transhumanism, I defined transhumanism as follows. Quote, a life philosophy, an intellectual and cultural movement, and an area of study, unquote, which prioritizes reason and the use of technology to accelerate human evolution past our current biological limits. However, this does not fully capture what transhumanism is, the kinds of attitudes that it has towards our bodies, and the kinds of values that it encourages. We might provide this second definition. Transhumanism is a social and philosophical movement which argues that the most happy, fulfilled life is one which transcends our humanity. That is, it is characterized by a discontentment with the present state of humanity, that is, our human condition, in many, if not all, spheres of life. And thus, when we're looking at the environments that we have constructed, when we're looking at how we ought to live and move within these environments, transhumanism offers us a particular path forward. It says, if you hitch your wagon to technology, and if you continue to try to evolve and progress by using these artificial means, you will be able to solve so many of your problems. And ultimately, you'll be able to solve some of them on the fundamental problems of human life, like dying, like diseases, like aging. Thus, we might say that in relation to the natural environment, what transhumanism offers us is encouragement to utilize these artificial means and systems and technologies in order to live a happy, fulfilled life. In other words, if we want to solve our problems, get away from all of these things that are holding us back now, we need to lean into artificiality. We need to lean into technology. Thus, a lot of transhumanists, technologists, and futurists think that just based on the way that our society is heading right now, there is going to come a point in our near future where we're going to make such frequent and staggering technological progress that our life is going to change forever. The nature of humanity is going to radically be transformed. And how we think about and look at the universe is also going to drastically change. And so, what I want to do in the last lecture of this unit is just look at this event that is known as the singularity, which a lot of thinkers believe we are approaching, and that it is an inevitable event that is going to occur to us in the near future, perhaps within the next few decades. What is the singularity? Well, to investigate that, today we're going to look at one chapter of Ray Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is Near. He says right at the beginning of this chapter, the pace of change of our human created technology is accelerating, and its powers are expanding at an exponential pace. What he provides in some of these opening pages is data to support the idea that the rate of our technological advancement isn't just linear, but it is actually increasing exponentially. And so we are reaching a point in human civilization where we are about to shoot up with regards to technological advancement and scientific discovery. Over time, computers and AI have just gotten better, and they will continue to get better. If we look at what humans were doing just a few hundred years ago, we can see how human life has been irrevocably transformed by these technologies that now saturate our daily lives. Now everyone is walking around with a supercomputer in their pockets, an iPhone or Android. Everybody has computer and access to the internet. Cars, automobiles have become commonplace. All of these new technologies that we're using today haven't been around for that long, and yet they have come to really saturate how we look at and interact with the world and other people. Even our Western society here in the United States is intimately built on these electrical infrastructure and systems, these pieces of technology, social media, digital media, so on and so forth. If we look at when humans first began developing technology, we will notice that the rate of our technological progress has increased exponentially over the last 100,000 years or so. In a very short time, we went from no computers to computers being in every home. And this is just a very small snapshot of the history of human beings on this planet. Thus, Kurzweil and others are going to argue that as we continue to develop this technology, it's going to continue to saturate our lives more and more. He says that the acceleration of technological progress is going to surprise people because they aren't taking this exponential growth into account. And eventually, what he thinks that this technological progress is going to lead to is an event known as the singularity, which he thinks is both inevitable. It's something that we're all going to face at some point in the future. And by we, I mean humans. We might not be alive for it. But it's also desirable because it is going to have all of these awesome effects on human beings and their ability to control the world and themselves and live the kinds of lives that they want to live. He defines the singularity as follows: a future period during which the pace of technological change will be so rapid, so deep, that human life will be irreversibly transformed. Thus, what he implies is that the singularity will change every facet of our lives: our past, our future, how we understand biology, spirituality, morality, technology, and society. It's kind of hard for us to wrap our heads around what this is and why it would have such a humongous impact on us. But just imagine the following scenario. Our computers continue to get better and better. Our technologies get better and better. Eventually, we learn to develop AIs that can process things and analyze data a lot faster than us. We put these AIs into the workforce. We allow them to make some decisions for us, to run critical parts of our infrastructure. Perhaps eventually we create what is known as an AGI, an artificial general intelligence, which can use its intelligence in solving and making decisions in a bunch of different spheres or domains of human life. It is not hard to see that once we create an AI that is sufficiently complex and intelligent, that it will be able to modify its own code very quickly. It will be able to invent new things very quickly that are more efficient and that do things better than our current artifacts. It will be able to devise new plans for production and consumption, for trading, for importing and exporting, and all of these different things. If our technology continues to progress at an exponential rate, eventually where we will reach a point where the rate of technological change will be so great that these supercomputers, these AGIs that we have, will be making life-changing discoveries every second. And once that happens, human life is going to be transformed. Our understanding of ourselves is going to change. Our understanding of the cosmos is going to radically change. And with it, we are going to be able to control not only our own bodies and our own minds better, but we'll be able to develop a mastery over matter, the laws of physics, perhaps opening and closing wormholes, faster than light travel, all of these different things that are going to revolutionize how we live and the kinds of things that we experience. This is what Kurzweil and other futurists think is in store for us. Supposing that technological advancement continues. And it looks like it's going to continue because people are creating and experimenting and doing research every day that is pushing the bounds of human knowledge. What lies in our future is what he calls one particular epoch in the history of human civilizations. In one part of this chapter, he describes the existence and the development of the universe and life through 6 evolutionary epochs, as he calls them. The first epoch, which began several billion years ago, is characterized by the emergence of atoms and information. That is, things encoded in a particular physical way. This was the advent of what we might call physics and chemistry. After the Big Bang, particles emerged with certain properties, elements were formed, and different planetary and celestial bodies were formed as the result of these uh, amalgamations of radiation and through the expansion and through the colliding of these different things. Very early universe stuff. Well, at some point after that, we know that life emerged. And this is what he characterized as Epoch 2, the advent of biology and DNA. Occurring also several billion years ago, but closer to where we are now, he thinks, life emerged, And we see the origination of self-replicating mechanisms and record keeping. Think about it like this. Things that are non-living are just kind of pushed and pulled by the laws of nature and the universe, right? We can't tell all that much about what happens to a rock during its lifespan by cracking it open and looking at it. Perhaps we can date it using carbon dating, but that rock is just going to suffer kind of whatever happens to it because it can't move around, it can't do anything by itself. A life, however, does not work like this. At some point on this planet, and perhaps in other places in our universe, life emerged, DNA emerged. And so matter found some sort of way of replicating itself by splitting itself, right? Up and up and up, more and more and more. This is how our bodies grow. This is how a fetus grows in the womb, for example. And life found a way to encode the kinds of experiences that it had and, well, its own blueprints in these different mechanisms, in these genes and DNA. Thus, this was a crazy thing to happen in our universe. Somehow life originated, and what life has the ability to do is basically keep a record of its own evolutionary history. This is something that we can do now, but through different means and something our bodies still do. But this is a really important, you might say, evolutionary leap from lifeless atoms and information in the void to the emergence of life, which self replicates, which is able to react to things in its environment. Well, as that life continued to evolve, as its different mechanisms continue to evolve, what we see eventually is the emergence of brains. And Kurzweil says that the emergence of brains is what characterizes the third epoch, which we might say occurred about 521 million years ago. This is where we see the emergence of perception, detection of information, processing and storage of that information, as well as mental modeling. The earliest forms of life could react to their environment, but they don't have the same capacities that we do today because we have brains. What can brains do? Well, another way of thinking about what a brain is the universe generating the ability to experience itself, which is a really interesting idea. Organisms with brains can see things, they have perception, they can feel things, uh, smell things, perhaps, hear things. Of course, this is going to vary from organism to organism, but what a brain allows an organism to do is detect aspects of its environment, process the information and stimuli that is coming into it, and store that information in the form of memory, for example. More complex brains also allow the organism to make some sort of mental model of their environment and of their life. This is something that has been extremely powerful in our evolutionary development because it has allowed us to, as we saw before, create and keep up oral traditions, create culture, pass information on to future generations, concretize the kinds of thoughts and models that we have in our brain in the real world. And eventually, when we enter Epoch 4, the creation of various tools and technologies, which we might say happened about 1 million years ago. In this epoch, sufficiently complex organisms, namely humans or the ancestors of humans, discovered that they could create things like tools that would make their lives easier, that they could use on the surrounding environment. And what kinds of technologies that do we have now? Well, our technologies are not just tools in the rudimentary sense, but we have things like computers. We have things like tablets, information technologies and systems, hard drives and storage. Nowadays, what we have been able to do is develop technologies that automate processes for us, whether that is the creating of clothing, whether that is, the generation of energy that we can use for other purposes, but also the storage and processing of information. So we are in an incredibly important epoch right now. And Kurzweil thinks in the next few decades, we will be entering the next one, in which our technology will become so advanced that we are going eventually to be able to merge ourselves with our technology. And this is what characterized Epoch 5. In the near future, Kurzweil thinks that we will be able to merge our human consciousnesses with these technologies that we develop, machine technology, which will allow us to transcend our biological human states and potentially stave off aging, disease, and death forever. Upload our minds perhaps into some cloud uh, in which we never have to worry about dying, in which we can go on living and doing amazing things. Obviously, during this epoch, our understanding of the universe is going to change drastically. Our bodies are going to change, our minds are going to change, and we might become something that we wouldn't even regard as human, but what Kurzweil and other futurists call post-human. Because we will be something so completely different from the kinds of things we are now, with this flesh and bones stuck to us, with having to deal with all of these human issues. Eventually, however, as our understanding of the universe evolves, as our technology evolves, Kurzweil thinks that we will reach at some point in the future the sixth epoch, which he characterizes as the universe wakes up. And what he means by this is through the development of our technology and its application, we will be able to basically colonize the entire universe, assimilate that matter and energy into us, and become what is a unified super consciousness, such that the only thing that exists in the universe is what we are. This thing that has completely taken over and assimilated everything else into it. Thus, what transhumanism paints for us is something like a philosophy of life, but also a prediction about what our future is going to look like. The transhumanists, by and large, think that in our near future, human life is going to radically transform. There's going to be a massive explosion of intelligence, creation, innovation, invention, etc. Something that Kurzweil mentions is that there might be Nobel Prize winning discoveries that are going to happen more and more rapidly. And at some point in the near future, they will be happening every second, revolutionizing our production, revolutionizing our bodies and our understanding of the universe. Consequently, the way that we understand our past, present, and future is going to radically change. Our whole fields of biology, philosophy, chemistry, physics, architecture, morality, politics, all of that is going to change because some of the fundamental things of human life will have been transformed. The kinds of bodies we have, whether or not we need to work, the kinds of technologies that we have available to us, so on and so forth. In the near future, we might even see some of the first steps of humans merging themselves with machine technologies. We are already kind of seeing this with regards to Neuralink and artificial limbs that people have. We might end up in the next few decades with a cyberpunk like situation of people replacing their flesh and blood limbs with mechanical arms and legs, or a mechanical brain, a mechanical heart, and so on and so forth. Continue this process forward into the future long enough, and eventually our bodies may be completely different. They might not be organic or carbon based anymore. And we may even create and join a post human artificial intelligence hive mind that we are all a part of. Although now you might say we're getting into the realm of science fiction. In any case, these technologies are going to allow us to do crazy things. And fundamentally, the transhumanists are going to say we should lean into these technologies. We should research them. We should produce them. We should fund them if we want to fix some of the fundamental problems of the environment that we are living in right now. Because with these technologies, we'll be able to operate at maximum capacity all the time. We will never get tired. We will never have to take a break. But we will probably have the opportunity to kind of live whatever life that we want because we can make machines do everything for us. We'll be able to die if and when we want, because presumably by this point we will have conquered aging and disease, and we might be able to stave off death entirely by, again, transcending our flesh and bone biological forms. We'll be able to know and basically experience whatever we want to. Because if we merge ourselves with machine technology, we will be able to download those things from others. Other people's skills and knowledge bases, their experiences. We will have such a complete control over the universe around us, ourselves, and other organisms that we will basically be able to mold the universe and ourselves how we see fit, having power similar to, well, gods that you see in works of literature. Eventually, Kurzweil thinks that we will reach total unification between material and virtual reality, and it may be the case that we assimilate all of the matter and energy in the universe into ourselves, becoming the absolute or the only thing in existence. Thus, what transhumanism, presents for us is a philosophy of life, a few different attitudes about our current evolutionary state, and predictions about our future. Many of them are optimistic about our ability to tackle these problems that ail us today and fix them using technology. Thus, you could say transhumanism says we can fix the problems of our environment and human life by leaning into technology and artificiality. However, this is just one possible path forward. Perhaps you don't think that there's anything wrong with dying. Perhaps you accept that about yourself. Maybe you don't want to lean into this technology and develop it. Maybe you're more worried about what AI is going to do than hopeful. Is there another way that we might go if we want to tackle some of the fundamental problems that face us today? Well, there is. And we're going to be looking at that in the next unit. If transhumanism encourages us to lean into artificiality, we might say that environmental philosophy will encourage us to lean into nature and naturality. Thus, what we're going to be looking at in our next unit is a bunch of different philosophical views on the environment, its place in human life, and how changing our relationship with it could actually result in making our lives a lot happier and more fulfilled. So, take a look at some of those readings, do some Googling if you want, and I hope you look forward to our foray into environmental philosophy. Until then, I hope you found this interesting, and I will see you next time. Bye.